South Korea, an election is looming, and front and center, cryptocurrency.
Yeah, it's pretty fascinating.
Welcome to this deep dive. Today, we're unpacking a recent article all about South Korea's upcoming snap presidential election.
And our mission, really, is to figure out why crypto has suddenly become such a defining issue there. It's one of the world's biggest crypto markets, after all.
Exactly. We want to know who the key players are, what specific policy changes are actually on the table.
So let's dive into this source material and see what it tells us.
What's really striking is how quickly this topic, often seen as kind of niche, has just vaulted to the forefront of national politics in a major economy.
And this election, the one happening June 3rd, wasn't even on the calendar originally.
Right. It was triggered by the impeachment of former President Yoon Suk-yeol late last year, that whole controversial martial law declaration.
Huge political shockwave. And it created this accelerated timeline. And bam, suddenly crypto is one of the hottest topics.
Absolutely. And, well, it's not entirely new, is it? Former President Yoon's 2022 campaign, it sort of dabbled in crypto reform promises.
That's true. He was explicitly trying to court younger voters back then, the early adopters.
I remember that, but this article suggests a pretty big shift. It feels, much more intense this time around.
It really does. And it's clearly not just a youth thing anymore. That's the key change, I think.
That seems crucial. The conversation's just broadened out dramatically.
Yeah, it's pulling in older generations now. And they're not just testing the waters. The article says they're putting substantial wealth into digital assets.
And that demographic change is really shaking up the political landscape.
Completely.
So who are the main candidates pushing these policies? The article names 3 frontrunners.
And kind of remarkably, they all seem to be singing from a similar crypto-friendly hymn sheet.
That's the really surprising part, the common ground.
Yeah.
So you've got Lee Jae-myung, right, from the opposing Democratic Party.
Yep, returning for a second go with a crypto-focused campaign. He lost to Yun last time.
Then there's Moon-soo, representing the current ruling party, the People Power Party, or PPP.
Although, interestingly, the article notes former President Yoon has reportedly distanced himself from the PPP for this election. Post-impeachment fallout, presumably.
Adds a layer of intrigue. And the third one, Lee Jun-suk.
Correct. Lee Jun-suk. He was actually the youngest leader the PPP ever had, but he split off.
Right. Founded his own reform party just this January.
And the main point is, all 3 of these leading candidates have rolled out crypto-friendly proposals publicly.
Why now? Why is crypto such a central plank for all of them? What's really changed?
Well, the article quotes Park Sin-jun. He's head of the Blockchain Research Center at Dongguk University.
Okay, what's his take?
He argues politicians have really grabbed onto it as a key campaign issue for a few big reasons. One is the broader national push towards a digital economy.
Makes sense. What else?
Also, a desire for maybe more transparency, possibly using blockchain in areas like political funding.
Yeah.
Plus, the emergence of blockchain tools for political participation itself. And critically, the huge growing demand for investor protection from all these people holding digital assets.
So it's moved way beyond just tech or finance.
Exactly. It's become an economic, social, and political issue. Big time.
That really clicks. It touches so many areas. Okay, let's drill down into the specific policy debates the article mentions. First up, those strict banking rules.
Yeah, the current setup is pretty tight. Crypto exchanges basically have to partner with a licensed bank just to handle Korean won, the fiat currency.
And the result of that, what does it mean in practice?
Well, it's created almost a monopoly. There are only 5 approved platforms operating right now.
Wow, only 5?
And it also effectively shuts out corporations because users have to open accounts at these partner banks using their personal legal identity. No corporate accounts.
Are the candidates looking to change this?
Yes. Both Lee Jae-myung and Moon-soo have explicitly said they'll ease these banking rules. Seems like a clear point of agreement. Got it. Okay, moving on from banking. Stablecoins are another hot topic, right? Lee Jae-myung has a specific idea here.
He does. He proposed launching a stablecoin pegged directly to the won. The idea is to make South Korea less reliant on stablecoins issued abroad.
But that didn't go over smoothly with everyone. Lee Jae-suk really took him to task on that, didn't he?
Oh, absolutely. He was sharply critical. He brought up the Terra KRW collapse. Remember that algorithmic stablecoin pegged to the won?
Hard to forget. Disaster.
Exactly. So Lee Jae-suk publicly questioned Lee Jae-myung's plan. Like, what assets would actually back it? How would they handle market risks? And crucially, how would they guarantee it wouldn't just fail like Terra?
Yeah, fair questions. He called it just a slogan, apparently.
He did, dismissed it as lacking substance.
And this wasn't just online sniping. They actually argued about stablecoins in a live debate.
Which just shows how central this stuff is now. During that debate, Lee Jae-myung defended his idea. He argued that his proposed stablecoin would be centralized and fiat-backed.
Trying to differentiate, right? Saying it's inherently safer than the algorithmic kind, like Terra KRW.
Okay, let's shift gears slightly. Play-to-earn gaming, P2E. Big in Korea, but the article says these games are actually banned locally.
That's right. Current rules prohibit them, which is interesting because former President Yoon had promised to lift those bans back in 2022.
But he never did.
Nope, never happened.
So how are the current candidates treating P2E?
Lee Jun-suk is especially keen on this. He frames gaming as this huge economic engine for the country.
Second semiconductor industry, I think the article said.
That's the quote. Noting gaming was over a fifth of the country's exports last year. It's huge.
So what's his pledge?
He's promised major regulatory support, taxes, exports, talent development, aiming to grab 10% of the global gaming market.
Ambitious.
His argument is that banning blockchain P2E specifically just pushes creative industries and talent out of the country.
And you can see the appeal. There was that recent news about Nexon.
Yeah, huge buzz. Nexon, the big game developer, launched a new title with its own crypto tied to it.
And their shares.
Went through the roof, reportedly. So it just highlights the potential economic impact everyone's looking at.
Okay, finally, the really big one with global eyes on it. Spot Bitcoin ETFs.
This is a major campaign promise for both Lee Jae-myung and Moon-soo.
Clearly following the U.S. approval earlier this year.
Definitely. The article quotes Cho Jae-woo, an assistant professor at Hansung University.
And what did he say?
He observed that South Korea is, well, distinctly following the U.S. lead here. He even sounded a bit disappointed they didn't manage to lead themselves, seeing it as just catching up to a global trend.
So what's stopping them now? What are the actual hurdles?
The main legal roadblock mentioned is the country's Capital Markets Act.
How so?
As it's written now, the act just doesn't recognize crypto as an eligible underlying asset for an ETF.
Ah, okay. A fundamental definitional issue.
Pretty much. But the Financial Services Commission, the FSC, the main regulator, they're apparently actively looking into the legal changes needed. They have a dedicated crypto committee working on it.
And is there real demand for these ETFs in Korea? Or is it just politicians talking?
Oh, seems like there's significant demand, especially again from those older investors we talked about.
Right.
The head of the Financial Industry Association actually urged regulators back in February to approve Bitcoin and Ether ETFs.
Citing that demand.
Citing rising demand? Yeah.
Yeah.
And arguing that ETFs are actually a safer, more regulated way for people to get exposure compared to, buying coins directly on exchanges.
It all comes back to that changing voter base, doesn't it? It's not just the young tech crowd driving this anymore.
The data really paints a picture. The Financial Intelligence Unit, the FIU, tracks this stuff.
Yeah.
End of 2024, South Korea had 9.7 million KYC verified crypto investors.
9.7 million, that's huge.
And get this, it was a 25% jump in just the second half of 2024.
Wow. Across all age groups.
Pretty much. Big growth in the 30s and 40s, but also a 25% increase among investors over 50.
And the article mentioned older investors hold more wealth.
That's the kicker. The FIU data shows older investors generally have much larger holdings.
Like how much larger?
By year end, 221,000 people held at least 100 million won in crypto. It's about, $73,000 US dollars.
Okay, a significant amount.
And here's the really telling part. A massive 78% of those investors, the ones holding over $73,000, were over 40 years old.
78%. Of the wealthier crypto holders are over 40. Okay, that just flips the whole young voter narrative completely.
Right. That one stat basically explains why all the candidates are suddenly on board.
It's not niche anymore. It's a core economic issue for a large, wealthy segment of the population.
Exactly. What started as an appeal to youth has, rapidly become this broad economic and social force affecting millions across generations. And that's why you see the push for regulated things like ETFs accelerating.
And this is all happening in a market that's already a global heavyweight in crypto.
Absolutely. The article notes the Korean one was actually the most traded fiat currency against crypto globally in Q1 2024, mostly retail-driven.
So the big institutions, banks, funds, they're not really in yet.
Not in a big way, according to the article. They're mostly still on the sidelines.
But that might change.
It could. The FSC is preparing to launch pilot trading, specifically for professional investors.
Oh, interesting. When?
A phased introduction is planned for 2025, so the door might be opening for institutions soon.
With all this political spotlight, how has the public mood changed? Is crypto still seen as just, wild speculation?
Cho Jae-woo, the professor, observes a real shift. He says discussions are way more active, more open now, less skepticism than before.
People are making up their own minds.
He feels the public is approaching it more neutrally now, yeah. And Park Sung-joon adds that compared 2022, when it was often seen as speculative, maybe untrustworthy,
Right.
by this 2025 election, it's undeniably a key policy issue. And the push is towards institutionalization, towards regulated products.
Before we wrap, any updates on the election itself? The article mentioned recent polls.
Yeah, it confirms the election date is June 3rd, and it included data from a survey done May 23rd to 25th.
And the numbers.
Showed Lee Jae-myung leading with about 44.9% support. Kim Moon-soo was second at 35.9%.
And Lee Jun-suk.
Further back at 9.6%, though he had gained about 3 points from an earlier poll. So Lee Jae-myung and Kim Moon-soo are definitely the two main contenders right now.
Okay, so wrapping this all up, what's the biggest thing you took away from this article?
For me, it's just the speed and scale of the change. How fast crypto went from being this young voter outreach thing to a core election issue driven by millions of investors across different age groups. It really highlights its economic weight in South Korea now.
Yeah, I agree. And for you, what stood out?
I was struck by how specific the policy debates are. We're talking banking access, stablecoins, P2E gaming, ETFs. These aren't just vague promises anymore.
You're tackling real regulatory hurdles mentioned in the article, like that Capital Markets Act.
Exactly. It shows the candidates are really responding to specific investor demands and the existing market structure. It feels much more grounded.
Okay, so here's where it gets really interesting for you to think about. You've got strong political will across the leading candidates. You have regulators actively working to clear the path, even planning institutional access for next year.
Right, the momentum seems to be there.
So given all that, how quickly could South Korea actually manage to fully integrate digital assets into its traditional financial system? And what might that kind of massive shift mean for one of the world's most active retail crypto markets?
Definitely something to ponder as you watch how crypto policy plays out globally.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.